It is another waitingfornextyear.com podcast. We are brought to you by the Evergreen Podcast Network. And as usual, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Once again, I'm Josh Ploha, your host, with my co-host, Seth Wanamaker. We are back with our Cavs Weekly podcast on a wonderful Wednesday night in Cleveland, Ohio. And I feel like my spirits are much higher this week than they were in last couple of weeks, even though Jarrett Allen's injury, and we'll talk about that. But just the way the Cavs looked last night in Indiana, it left a lot of Cleveland fans happy. So we'll get into that much more in the next hour or so. Seth, how are you doing? How do you like the Cavs game last night? And just most importantly, just let's talk Cavs.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Back in the old Marriott. So racking up the points at this point. My work travel has got me significant points I got going on. So happy about that. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Last week we had a conversation. We were coming off some real stinkers in terms of games. This week there were a couple at the tail end after we taped with Charlotte and the 76ers. But we're coming off of 2 wins in a row against the Raptors and Pacers, so feeling a little bit more upbeat, even with the considerable news that is Jarrett Allen and really having no timetable. So I know we're going to dig into Allen, but feeling good. You know, Cavs are still in the thick of it in mid-March, which is incredible to say. So feeling good and ready to talk some more Cavs hoops.
Yeah, I feel like ever since we've been starting this podcast, I think probably like 6-7 weeks ago now, it's tough to be disappointed when you take like the wide look at this season, just because, as we've been saying, Cavs are playing with house money. I mean, they're already, I don't even know their exact record. They are 38-27. So already with, say, 17 games ago, they're already 11 games over what Vegas had them pegged at prior to the season. So like we continue to say, I guess it's important for us as fans as well as podcast guys just to always just remember, take a step back. And the Cavs could literally lose out. They won't, but they could lose out the rest of the season. And like just looking ahead to next year. I mean, I guess this is cliche. We are waiting for next year.com. But looking ahead to next year, they can literally lose out the last 17 games. And next year's outlook, I mean, the expectations will be real no matter what happens this offseason. It's always just important to remember, take a step back and just realize how special this Cavs season is, no matter what happens the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's easy to get sucked in, and I found myself do it constantly this year, where getting sucked into a certain seed or to a certain way that the Cavaliers played when they had their full arsenal of players, and then take a step back and think about what Evan Mobley is accomplishing this year, what Jarrett Allen's accomplished this year, the leap Darius Garland's made, the fact that they've done all this without their leading scorer from last season, Colin Sexton, just like the macro aggregate things that they've done this year. So much anticipation. So, yeah, this year is going to be sweet no matter what happens. And next year is where, for the first time since 2018, we're going to have, I think, serious expectations that we haven't had. So I'm going to try to temper that and just be a fan, because they're still going to be young next year. But man, like as you said, this year was sweet regardless, and I'm going to hold off on all that expectation talk until next year. So this year is all about appreciating what these young guys are doing. And man, if you're talking duo under 22, 23, Evan Mobley and Darius Garland,
Best
I don't
in the
know
league?
more. They got to be up there, right? I mean, geez, I should have prepped for this question that I just asked myself.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, because Cade Cunningham, but he doesn't have any really good running mate that's young. Josh Giddey doesn't. I mean, there's not too many 22 and 23-year-olds that are as good as Evan Mobley is, let's be honest, and Darius Garland for that matter. And then when you pair them together, I can't think of any. And to piggyback off of that, it's crazy to think, like, I know last year, the year before, ESPN or one of those sites did like the best young cores in the NBA, and the Cavs weren't even top 10. I might have been going to this year now that I think about it. I'm trying to think now. The Cavs weren't even a top 10 best young core. I mean, old takes exposed, or whatever that Twitter account is, should be all over that. But it's just the leap I don't. It's just the leap Darius Garland has, and we can take us. I mean, we can talk about this for hours. The leap Darius Garland has taken. I mean, last night he just scored a career high 41 with like 13 assists. Evan Mobley being the unicorn that he is. I mean, I guess now we talk about the Jarrett. We'll start off on the downside of what happened this past week and start off with the Jarrett Allen injury. He broke his middle finger on his non-shooting left hand. Do you know what? By the way, speaking of, I put on my investigative hat and I was up like wide awake. It was Sunday night. I was wide awake. It was like 12:30. I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna go back and watch the first 10 minutes of the game and try to figure out when Jarrett Allen broke his finger, or assuming he broke a finger. I think, yeah, they said he fractured a finger. We just weren't sure which one. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back and figure it out. And then, yeah, he went up he blocked it with his right hand. For some reason, I don't know if it was just like, it was just one, it's unlucky. I can't talk. It's unlucky. But he came up with his left hand and it hit the rim in a weird, awkward way. But I guess we'll talk on the downside of this. Injuries. I hope for the Cavs' sake, they're getting their bad luck and injuries out of the way this season before next season when the expectations will be real. Because let's be honest, Jarrett Allen, I put out a list a few nights ago. I think it was Sunday night after I did that investigative work. The amount of players that have missed significant time this year for the Cavs and the fact that they're still as good as they are is incredible. I mean, they would easily be 5 to 6 games better than they are if they didn't. I mean, every team suffers injuries. I know that. But just like no team suffers this many injuries. Colin Sexton, Ricky Rubio, Darius Garland. I mean, I'm just naming. Evan Mobley was out for a little bit. Jarrett Allen. You're talking about like 7 guys out of the top 13 in a rotation have been out a significant amount of time. It's just crazy that I guess it's the next man up mentality is real for this team. And just like, I guess it says a lot about just the way the culture is for the Cavs, and who would have ever thought that with JB and Evan, or with JB and Kobe Altman, and just the way this team is. I mean, they're special. This is cliche too, but this team is special. They really are.
Yeah, you truly had your Magnum PI work going on that night, because I saw your tweet got a lot of traction. You had a beautiful zoomed in camera angle. You pinpointed it.
I was not
exactly what it was.
And I'll be honest, I hate when people, with all the apps that we have now, I hate when people record a TV screen. But the Bally Sports app is not the greatest. I won't say that it sucks, but it's not the greatest. And one, I mean, I know it's not the best app whatsoever. Luckily, I have DirecTV, so I just watch all my games on DirecTV. But they also, on the computer, they won't allow you to screen record or take screenshots while watching the game. It'll just come up as a black screen. So I was like, well, looks like I was put my phone up to my laptop screen and do it that way. But you couldn't really, I was surprised. You couldn't even really tell that I did that. But right when I found it, I was like, oh, man. Yeah, I'll be honest, I was not expecting that tweet to get that much traction. But it is what it is. I hope I didn't make the Cavs angry by doing my investigative work.
You were the Tom Selleck in Magnum PI that we needed. Everyone needed to know where that came from. And you said it. It was so awkward. Like he got up with his right and made a heck of a play on the ball, and then his left like just kind of flailed, but he like rotated his shoulder. It was so odd to see him go up with his
I don't know if he did. Like, it's one of those things where he might just do that all the time and we just don't notice it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where it's just like the Cavs have had bad luck with injuries all year. Just another bad luck situation. And now we don't know how long. I'm assuming he will. Let's see. When's the Cavs? I had the schedule pulled up. Their last game is April 10th. So just over a month and a day away. If I had to bet money on it, he'll be back by the postseason, which will start like April 12th, April 13th ish. If it was his shooting hand, it'd be one thing, and he doesn't really shoot that much. But just, I don't see him missing playoff games with a broken middle finger on his left hand, unless it's really, really badly broken. If anything, just put if it's not that bad, just put a splint on it, or just tape it to his index finger or ring finger or something. I don't know. I just hope it's not that bad of an injury. But then again, it has opened up these last 2 games with Evan Mobley becoming the 5-man for the Cavs. I mean, we thought Evan Mobley hit a rookie wall these last 2 games, it's like, wow, not only has he basically secured Rookie of the Year, but I don't know, it's hard for me not to get super excited about what I've been excited about Evan Mobley ever since he showcased his skill early in the season. But just these last 2 games, man, maybe like Joel Embiid and like Bam Adebayo will do better against him defensively. But just the things like he can take guys off the dribble from the 3-point line, or he can dribble past them and jam it with his left hand like he did last night. Spot up and shoot a 3. I know his 3-point percentage isn't the greatest, but that will improve. Or post a guy up and do like a hook shot and dominate the boards. I mean, the last 2 games, he has like 30 rebounds.
29 rebounds the last 2 games.
It is crazy.
29.
So, yes, the Jarrett Allen injury sucks, but maybe for the long-term development of Evan Mobley, him being thrown into the fire as the 5-man in the Cavs center and just having to be and that's another thing too. I'm drawing off on the tangent now. He needs to get better at setting screens. This is a huge opportunity for him to do that. I mean, the Cavs, Kevin Love is good at setting screens, but Jarrett Allen is like the go-to PNR guy. Now it's going to be Evan Mobley. So maybe for the long-term development of the rookie, maybe him being thrown in the fire like this his rookie season is going to be huge, especially going into next year.
Yeah, you made a good point about the upcoming center matchup. So they have Miami Heat, so they have Bam Adebayo. Then they have Chicago, who Vucevic will likely play. He's not as impactful, obviously, as a Bam. Then they've got the Clippers, so you've got Zubac and Hartenstein. And then they have the 76ers with Embiid, and then the Nuggets with Jokic.
And the scouting report on Evan Mobley is just going to be it's going to be in bold print, be super physical.
Yeah, ragdoll.
They're gonna they'll waste all their fouls they can, especially with their backup big guys, and just be super physical. I mean, he's a 20-year-old rookie. Mm-hmm. He's gonna grow into his body still. He still has to put on some weight and gain a lot of muscle, but they're gonna bully him, and it'll be like we know it's gonna happen. Evan Mobley knows it's gonna happen. It'll just be interesting to see how he reacts.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. It's going to be really fascinating to see how Bickerstaff kind of plays these big guys coming up. Is he going to try to throw in like an Ed Davis or the newly acquired center that they just picked up mere hours ago, Moses Brown, to eat some of these big guy minutes, or are they going to stick with Mobley at the 5 and see what happens, try to space them out a little bit? But I think a good point that you said was this really gives us an opportunity to see Evan Mobley played a 3, 4, and 5 this year. And thinking about the Cavaliers, so I'm staying in the aggregate for a moment because the Allen injury stinks, right? It's going to be tough for them to win a lot of games and to really make up ground for seeds 1 through 5. We'll see if they can stick around the 6th seed. But in terms of seeing what Mobley can be in the aggregate and macro for next year, I think it's going to be really fun to see what he does. And if anything, if he gets his butt kicked, to be candid, he probably won't because he's incredible talent. But if he does, I don't mind like a hungry Mobley, kind of getting his butt kicked against some of these elite centers. I mean, he's playing 3 of the best 4 or 5 centers in the league the next 5 games. So if he goes into, this offseason having that taste in his mouth, I don't hate that one bit.
Yeah, I know when the Cavs first drafted him, it was like within 24 hours, he called the Cavs and said, hey, send your trainer out to LA so he can work out with me. Not only work out with me, but like his, not his diet, but like just to help him have a better NBA body going into his rookie year. So if now with a year, he's about to have a year under his belt and then being able to go against like you said, for the top, I'd say the top centers, Jokic, Embiid, are probably the 2 best centers in the league. And then he's going to have to go against Bam Adebayo on Friday night in Miami. He's one of the most athletic centers in the league. And then you have Vucevic Saturday night, and he's just a big dude that's just going to out-physical Mobley. I mean, let's be honest. Mobley's going to get out-physical, if that's even a word, out-physical. But, yeah, he's going to see – and then Jokic coming up, Nikola can literally do anything and everything on the basketball court. He's like a 6-foot point guard and a 7-foot center's body. It's crazy. I hope Evan Mobley. If Evan Mobley's, No, we don't get it. I hope Evan Mobley can become like a Jokic type, though. Just be able to point center, just like he showcased last night. That'd be perfect. But yeah, I mean, and Mobley's just going to see all types of not only centers, but like the best in the league. And I mean, he knows what's coming up. It'll just be interesting to see how he reacts and how his body reacts to just getting beaten up, because that like we both said, it has to be the number one bullet point on the scouting report. Just be super physical against Evan Mobley.
Yeah, I found myself feeling a little bit bad for Allen, because if we kind of rewind what happened earlier this year, the Cavaliers had an incredibly impressive victory against the Nuggets, and Allen kind of had the Joker's lunch for a lot of that game. I don't know if you remember it, but he was blocking Jokic's shot. He was kind of out muscling Jokic at times, and it was such an impressive game by Allen. I was kind of bummed. I was hoping to see, part 2 of that, because I think Jokic was going to come pretty strong, maybe remembering what happened the first time around. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And I think one of the really interesting things moving forward, if I can go back to like the tactical short term, is going to be what do the big rotation look like? They've still got all these big guys. They've got Kevin Love and Lauri Markkanen and Ed Davis and the new pickup. How are they going to deploy these guys against the bigger centers? It's going to be very fascinating to see, because they're still, they're going to try to win these games at all costs to stay 6 seed or above. So very interested to see what JB is going to deploy here over the next 5 games.
Yeah, you're right. And I think JB said it either prior to last night's game in Indiana or post game, that it'll just all depend on matchups. Evan Mobley won't always be the 5 guy, but it's just that they went up against, I mean, let's be honest, the Pacers aren't that good this year, especially after their trades with Sabonis. And he went up against Isaiah Jackson last night, who played 22 minutes. You can play Evan Mobley at the 5 against Isaiah Jackson. It'll just be interesting to see like what the Cavs do when they play really good teams like they're about to. I mean, we talked about this stretch. They're 4 games into this tough 9-game stretch. They're 2-2, but now like there's some tough ones coming up. I mean, this back-to-back at Miami, at Chicago, that's tough. We already know that they struggle in Miami. They always have, it seems like, for decades now. And speaking of that, I mean, there's like a Miami hangover because you like go out. I don't know what they do, but the Cavs are already in downtown Miami. I guess you could take that as a good thing because they're bonding as a team, but then a bad thing because they're going to be out in the sun a lot tomorrow on the beach. There's no beaches in Cleveland in March, let's be honest. And just, I don't know, Miami, hopefully Friday could either be like really ugly or like, I don't know. I just hope it's not really ugly. But then again, I know I said this prior to the podcast. If the Cavs were to go 1-1 during this back-to-back this weekend, I would gladly take a loss of Miami and a win in Chicago, especially with the standings the way they are.
Yeah, we've got the Clevelander Bar and Grill down in Miami, South Beach. Maybe the boys, get some familiarity, hit up the Clevelander. And I 100% agree with you. Miami's pulling away at this point. I think they're 3 games up above, the number 2 seed, and they're such a regular season team, aren't they? The Miami Heat. I mean, they're so good, so well coached. They've got such good veterans. I don't know if necessarily they're going to be a top like 3 or 4, even 4 pick to come out of the East, but it seems like they're running away with it a little bit. And Chicago's within grasp right now, and they're struggling. I think they've lost maybe 5 straight, and they got some guys banged up. So Chicago is definitely the game I have highlighted. If they can steal that one somehow, even though it is on the second night of a back-to-back, man, that'd be a big one.
I think we've discussed this multiple times too. Chicago is my dream matchup of the teams that will likely finish top 5: Miami, Philly, Milwaukee, Chicago, Boston. I'm all for getting the Bulls. I mean, yeah, they've been without Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso for a while, and Vucevic has been banged up. Zach LaVine's been banged up, they had DeMar DeRozan, who's an MVP candidate too. But just they've been, like you said, they've been struggling lately. They have lost 5 straight. They previously won at least because they're 5-5 in their last 10, and they've lost 5 straight. And they are currently, as we speak right now, they're currently losing to the Detroit Pistons in Detroit in the third quarter. They're losing by 1. So, I mean, they could lose 6 straight. And I'm assuming they play one more, either tomorrow night or Friday prior to Saturday. Maybe they don't. I hope they do because the Cavs have a back-to-back. That'll be tough if Chicago has like a 3-day rest and the Cavs have a back-to-back. But, yeah, I mean, we said this last week. It's all about staying in the top 6 for the Cavs. Stay in the top 6, guarantee yourself a playoff spot, get out of the play-in. Right now, as things currently stand, the Cavs are 3.5 games above Toronto, who they beat last Friday. I think it was last Friday. But technically, they're 3.5 games up, but really they're 4.5 up because the Cavs had the tiebreaker. So, I mean, with 17 games left, you're technically 5 games up. So, I mean, I know we talked about this during the last podcast too. During this rough stretch and just the rest of the season, if the Cavs go 500, so if the Cavs say, well, they can't go 500, I guess, because they have 17 games left. 8-9 or 9-8, the Raptors have to go 5 games better than that, and the Raptors have a very tough schedule the rest of the way. So yes, it would be great to have like a top 4 seed and have home court advantage in the first round, but I am just all about avoiding the play-in and just especially with Brooklyn lurking, with Kyrie, Kevin Durant, possibly Ben Simmons. Please just avoid the play-in, guys. Please.
Yeah, especially where Brooklyn's position. They're in the 8th seed right now, and if they stay brutal for whomever that other seed is there. So, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting finish. And we keep talking about it, but it's so relevant now. 17 games left. So I know NBA season's long, but, man, every game is critical at this point. So, yeah, the fact that you mentioned Chicago being the one team you'd want to play, I don't even think there's a close argument for the second team. If you look at who else the Cavaliers would potentially have to play in the first round of a playoff series, it'd be the Philadelphia 76ers. We've seen that matchup lately. No, thank you. Milwaukee Bucks. Nope. Boston Celtics. I know they didn't start hot, but they're like the best defensive team in the league at this point. I want no part of them and all their wings and Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and their centers, an animal who I think, we've shown that against very physical centers, the Cavaliers can be out rebounded, out muscled. So yeah, 100%. It would be sweet if Chicago could somehow climb up to that number 3 seed, Cavs stay at 6, and that'd be a heck of a first round matchup. And I'd be very curious to see what the odds would be out in Vegas for that 3-6 matchup.
Yeah, they can't. But then, like we said for weeks now, just get in the playoffs. I mean, I don't care. I would love for them not to get swept. But literally, the more playoffs experience this young team gets going into next year, the better. I mean, that's cliche, I guess. The more experience, the better. But just like give Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and just like all those young guys every single ounce and minute of playoff experience they can possibly get. Because let's be honest, the Cavs were a few weeks ago. They were projected to be the number 1 seed in the East by many teams, but they were by some sites. But they would have never been projected to make the NBA Finals. They're way too young. In a 7-game series where you literally play you could have a chance to play the same team 7 times in a row. The Cavs, they're just way too young to win 3 series in order to get to the finals, let alone. I mean, it's just tough. But yeah, I guess I'm circling back to just give me all the playoff experience this young team can get before expectations get real next year.
Yeah, and the way that Garland's really taken this step, watching the Indiana game and probably his best game as a pro, at least in terms of scoring the basketball. So Garland ended the game with 41 points, 13 assists, 2 steals. He was like shimmying the entire second half. No one could stop him. And he was getting guarded against Malcolm Brogdon, who is like a plus guard defender. I mean, he's pretty good. He's not like 23 anymore, but he's a pretty darn good defender in terms of, NBA guard defensive play. And what he was doing, it just made I couldn't help but kind of flash forward and think about, wow, if the Cavs could get like a Garland moment in the playoffs, I'm not even saying win a game, but just having that moment where he can step up, hit some big shots, take over portions of a game, man, it would do so much for his confidence, his maturation, and like we've saying, just kind of be a highway into next season. So 100% agree with you. Just get Mobley that experience. Hopefully if Allen can come back, Okoro, all these guys, and Yeah, I think obviously the Cavaliers aren't quite odds wise projected to be where they once were, just with all the injuries. But just get in there. The playoff experience is worth so much more than favorable matchup and win a game. Just get in and kind of go from there. One thing I wanted to bring up, and in terms of just getting in and just kind of reaching the playoffs and thinking through that. So Jarrett Allen, we haven't heard much about thus far. We don't know if he's going to come back, the severity of it, knee contusion in the finger. What do you think? What do you think the chances are that Jarrett Allen comes back to play? So I'll kind of take the regular season out of scope for a second. Let's just assume the break is pretty bad and he needs the next 4 weeks to kind of get right. Maybe a couple weeks to ice it, reduce swelling, and then 2 weeks for basketball activity to kind of get back. What do you think the chances are that Jarrett Allen comes back less than, call it 90%, that the Cavs would be willing to kind of put him in that position, less than 90%? We need him out there because we're trying to win a basketball game versus, hey, we want to make sure this guy gets right and can rest him and he can do all that rehab activity over the summer.
Well, I guess I'll start rehab-wise. I think he should be good because, he can still shoot with his right hand. He just can't really catch, obviously, with his left hand. He can still shoot. He can still be in, do conditioning drills and stuff like that. So I think once the doctor's clear him to play, he should be good to go. He shouldn't have any setbacks that way. But just I don't see a situation where he's not back. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I don't see a situation where he's not back for the playoffs because we don't know how severe the break was, but the fact that he's not getting surgery on it, I think says a lot too. So I feel like, from the time he broke it to the start of the playoffs, it's probably around 5 weeks. I feel like 5 weeks is plenty of time to, I've broken my wrist before, but I've never broken a finger. I feel like 5 weeks, especially with his non-shooting hand. So yeah, it'll affect him on rebounds and blocks, but I feel like 5 weeks is plenty of time. Let's put it that way. And he's probably already itching to get back and playing with his guys. If the playoffs come around, and hopefully they will, there's no way he won't play. That's just my gut feeling. But yeah, I don't know the exact amount of days or weeks, but I feel like 5 weeks or somewhere around there, give or take, is plenty of time for a non-shooting hand broken middle finger.
Yeah, you get that adrenaline going. He might just tell the doctor to cut it off. Like, let's go. We got a home playoff game at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So, yeah, I love to hear that, and that's exactly where I'm at. I think, luckily, it was a finger, and it wasn't something more, more damaging or potentially more risky. Just something that kind of popped into my head. I think they're going to be willing to, and I think Allen, like you said, there's no way he's going to sit out. It is hard. Like, one of the things we talked about in the Discord this week is, to be a successful team, I think you need superstars that play well at a superstar level. And maybe the second thing behind that for me is injury luck. Like, all these teams have won championships, and you can make, what do they call that? Like the different scenario happens, and then there's an entire other life that happens. Everything just, I know you need to step up, no excuses, but man, you can really map out how tough or how easy a route was based on injuries. So
the next man up mentality is real, but there's only so many next man ups you can do. Speaking of injury luck, the Cavs and their fans know all about it. 2015 NBA playoffs, Kevin Love goes down. We're not going to discuss in details because I don't want to bring up those bad memories. Kevin Love goes down, and then Kyrie goes down. Injury luck, boom, right there. So 2015 was already 7 years ago. 7 years ago, the Cavs dealt with it, but now it's just insane. It's really incredible to think of just how many injuries the Cavs have had this year, and JB's still comfortable going with 9 and 10 guys deep in their rotation. It's just, imagine how good this team could be and possibly will be next year at full strength. It's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, and all these guys that have stood out, like a Dean Wade or Lamar Stevens, that they've had to go to this year, where maybe they wouldn't have if everyone was healthy. Hey, maybe next year 1 or 2 injuries isn't as bad because some of these guys have gotten the experience. They've played in big games. They've been the reason why they won in certain games. So yeah, it could be, maybe next year we'll be looking at this year as a blessing in disguise. Well, hey, good thing that the depth guys got some serious, meaningful minutes because they might need 1 or 2 of them next year.
I mean, speaking of Dean Wade, who was that Friday night poster? Who saw that coming from freaking Dean Wade? I know the guys, the JB said it, some of the players said it. Oh, we all saw that coming. We were just telling them to do it in the game. If you would have, if there was a season bet that Dean Wade would posterize someone this season, I would have put my life savings on the fact that he would not do it. No one saw that coming. Even I don't think the team did either. And then you have Lamar Stevens with the game-sealing block last night in Indiana. Yeah, like you said, these guys stepping up that maybe if the team was at full strength, they probably wouldn't have gotten playing time. But like I said, at the start of this podcast, maybe for the long-term development of this team as a whole, these injuries will turn out to be like a thing that we look back on and say, maybe it's a good thing that those guys sat out because it gave other guys opportunities and gave other guys experience that they might not have gotten, but just. And another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, I promise I'm not going to jinx. I'm knocking on wood right now. It's crazy that with all these injuries, one specific Cavs player has not gotten hurt yet that has dealt with injuries ever since he became a Cav. I won't mention any names. I'm not going to jinx it. I already knocked on wood, but his number is less than 1.
Rhymes with Schmov. We won't talk about it.
But seriously, it's amazing that all these injuries keep happening. And then there's Kevin Love. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times too. His resurgence, he went from when are they going to buy him out to being stories have been written about him. I know someone had a really good story this past week or so. I forget who it was. Just like he went from when are they going to buy this guy out to a 6-man of the year candidate to like the Cavs' biggest leader and a huge voice for the team. His resurgence has been incredible, 1. And 2, it's been like the conversation has gone from when are they going to buy him out to will he retire as a Cavalier because he'll sign an extension either this offseason or next. That is like, if you would have told me that along with the Dean Wade poster would have been like my 1 and 2 of that will never happen this season.
The Dean Wade poster. So not only did he slam it over, I think the guy's name for Toronto is Kim Birch, I believe Birch. Because that's all funny.
People were saying Birch, please. Because people were saying Birch, please.
Which is phenomenal. And so the reason that he dunked over Birch was because he beat Scotty Barnes off the dribble. Like ultimate rookie defensive guru, Scotty Barnes. So just unbelievable. What a dunk. So
and then the celebration. It was so subtle, but I don't even know. It wasn't like skipping, but it was almost like a boxer that just knocked someone out and he was skipping back to his corner. It was like Dean Wade, dude. I hope he already has that on literally, like people said, frame it. I hope he already has that framed in his basement.
Yeah, I hope somebody asked him like what was going through his mind. If I had to bet, his answer would be I blacked out. I don't know what happened, and then I came to and I dunked on the guy. I don't think he has any idea.
I would never be able to poster someone. I'm like the white man can't jump. That's me. But I would definitely like black out and just like not remember what I did to celebrate if I ever did it, especially in an NBA game. Just like literally no one saw that coming. It's that would be a highlight reel for however long he's a Cav. That'll definitely be like the number 1 highlight reel for him.
Oh yeah, that was absolutely nasty. And yeah, like you talked about with Love, I think the fact that, and he's kind of sneakily done this, is he's been with the Cavaliers so long now. He's coming up on like the longest tenured like Cavaliers that the Cavaliers have had. Like he's sneaky, like building that list. So yeah, I mean, maybe does he end up accepting like a team friendly deal and becomes like a, just like the specialist, the big shooting specialist that can still rebound and pass a little bit over the twilight of his career? It might be.
I know we're a year and a half off from his contract expiring, but it will be interesting to see if he takes a team friendly deal because he wants to retire a Cav. I think he said that before, but that I mean, let's be honest. Every player that's on their current team. What do you think? Kevin Love's going to come out and say, no, I don't want to retire as a Cavalier as he's with the Cavs. But it will be interesting to see. Yes, there's a ton of time. A lot can change in the next year and a half. But just what a possible Kevin Love extension would and could look like. I don't know. I mean, the salary cap's going to go up. He's obviously making like freaking $30 million a year now. It's not going to be anywhere close to that. But if the Cavs and next season, I mean, if they're legitimate contenders, why wouldn't he want to stay and be the veteran that leads these young guys? He seems to be loving life right now. He, besides Jarrett Allen, it's always seems to be that Kevin Love either has a smile on his face or he's arguing with the referees. Although that's another thing too. We can talk about this forever. The Cavs been getting screwed over by these referees. I mean, whether it is as a team or Darius Garland just not getting the calls that these other point guards get. I mean, if Darius Garland got the calls that Trae Young gets, Darius would be averaging 10 points more a game because he'd have so many more free throws.
It feels like it's really become more apparent over the last couple weeks. Like he's just been getting knocked around and not getting calls, and it doesn't matter if it's a home game, away game. Yeah, I'm excited to, once this season kind of goes through, I'd love to do some deep dives in terms of like, call it maybe real action contact versus fouls drawn, or some kind of advanced statistic on how much contact a player draws versus fouls. Cause it seems like he's just getting bullied, and yeah, he's like a little guy, but to your point, so is Trae Young. So are all these other guards that, that get all the foul calls. So yeah, I think it's time to get a little bit more friendly whistle. I think we were all hoping that post All-Star game that he was going to immediately get a little bit more respect. And man, for the Cavs to do anything, I know it's all icing, but for the Cavs to do anything in the playoffs, they need a fair, decent whistle for Darius Garland, because he's the initiator of the offense.
Especially when the offense slows down and just the game slows down in general. But yeah, hopefully that time will come sooner rather than later. Just, it's crazy to see that, like, now, it's not really the Shaq effect, because Shaq was just bigger than everyone else, and that's why he didn't get calls. But maybe it's because Darius Garland doesn't flop as much as Trae Young does, and maybe that's why. I don't know. You'd think that maybe if you flop too much that you wouldn't get called. I don't know. It's not worth discussing. It's just, I wish the Cavs would get better referees than they have right now, but maybe that time will come too. Who knows? But then again, why am I complaining about this Cavs team? Because they are currently freaking 38-27 and then the 6th seed in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yep. So in light of that, and getting back on the positive train, I had a couple mailbag questions, if you're good. And I think this one probably has a positive outlook, but I'll let you answer it. So this was a question from Ryan. And the question, Josh, is if Jarrett Allen is out for the rest of the regular season, which who knows, maybe he will be, maybe he won't. But if Jarrett Allen's out for the rest of the regular season, do you project the Cavaliers to hang on to a top 6 seed? So this is putting you on the spot. Cavaliers have 17 games left. If Allen sits out the rest of the regular season, are they going to wind up top 6 seed?
To answer that simply, yes. But I will tell you why. Hold on, I'm looking up NBA strength of schedule right now because that's a huge reason why. Like I said earlier, Toronto plays tonight. So as things currently stand, while we are recording this podcast, the Cavs are 3.5 games up on the Toronto Raptors, and for what it's worth, they're 5.5 up on the Brooklyn Nets. Toronto plays tonight. If they lose, they will then go 4 games up. If they win, they'll go 3 games up, obviously. But with that tiebreaker, you add a game to that, because if the Cavs tie, the Cavs get it. Or if the Cavs tie with Toronto, the Cavs get the tiebreaker. I just don't see. I mean, unless the Cavs get really just like a huge downfall without Jarrett Allen these last 17 games, I just don't see a way that Toronto makes up that difference. Looking at strength of schedule, the Raptors had the 10th toughest strength of schedule the rest of the way. The Cavs had the 14th toughest. So, yeah, the Cavs obviously have a tough schedule. I know we've been talking about this stretch. They're 4 games into this tough 9-game stretch. But then you're looking at Toronto. I mean, Toronto not only has a 10th toughest schedule remaining, they have the Suns once, Heat once, Sixers twice, Nuggets, Bulls, Celtics. I know I've been saying this too. The Cavs just have to, if the Cavs go 8-9, the Raptors essentially have to go, I'm trying to think, trying to do quick math, like 13-5. That is tough. I mean, especially with the Cavs have been dealing with a bunch of injuries, but the Raptors are dealing with injuries too. Ogunjobi, he's been out. Van Vliet, I think, has been out. He missed the Cavs game. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But then again, we talked about this 4 or 5 weeks ago. Their 4 starters were for the top 10 in the league in minutes played, and they had the top 3 minutes played. So you saw these, not that you saw these injuries coming, but you knew this team was going to get worn out. That's what I know we discussed this like 3-4 weeks ago too. Nick Nurse, what are you doing, man? I mean, when you play when 3 of your players are the top 3 in the league in per minutes or minutes per game, and you have 4 of the top 10, and I think it was 5 of the top 23 or 5 starters. This was bound to happen. I mean, you're just like playing with fire, and like I said, I just hope if the Cavs can go 8-9 the rest of the way, which I think they can. They're 2-2 on this tough stretch so far with 5 games left in this 9-game stretch that we've been talking about. Just go 8-9 the rest of the way, and you need the Raptors to essentially go 4 or possibly 5 games better than 5 games better than you if they lose tonight. And I don't see any way that's possible.
If Cavs go 8-9, that would put them at 46-36 for the year. 46-36, which is incredible. Crazy.
And they have a chance to go better than 8-9 too. That's beyond incredible to me.
Yeah. Yeah, 46.
Wait, 46. So that'd be 19 games better than Vegas had them.
Yeah, I was just about to say almost 20 games better than where they were at.
And that's 8-9, and that's 8-9 the rest of the way. It's not even like that's a good final 17 games of the season.
I think you'd argue that definitely certain players and maybe even a couple of coaches would not be thrilled with 8-9. So yeah, I don't think it's like outlandish. Yeah, they've got tough games they're going to lose, but yeah, I don't think 8-9 is like super optimistic. I think it's like decent ending, probably something along those lines.
Just like we both been saying though, just win the games that you should win and steal a couple of the games that you shouldn't win. I mean, and just 8-9 doesn't seem like it's that bad, or 8-9 doesn't seem like it's that good. But then, I mean, if Toronto wins tonight, if you go 8-9, they have to go 11-6. I don't see that happening.
No, that's
actually wait. No, they wouldn't have to go 11. They'd have to go 12-5 because you have a game on them in the tiebreaker. Yeah. You're either 4 games up or 5 games up after tonight. So I just don't see that. Yeah, like I said, I just don't see how that's possible.
Yeah. I think the only team that has even like an outside shot of like running a table of sorts would be the Nets, but they would have to they would literally have to go like 15-4 or whatever wherever they're at right now. It would have to.
They would have to be exact. They would. I'm assuming they play tonight because they're a half game behind the Cavs. No, they don't. Okay, but they are 5.5 games behind the Cavs. They literally would have to go 5 games. If the Cavs go 8-9, Brooklyn has to go 13-4. I don't see that happening.
No, not with Kyrie still playing 50% and them trying to integrate all these new guys. And they've got some guys that are banged up too over there. So yeah, I think to succinctly answer the question, I do think the way they're positioned right now the Cavs lose 4 in a row, then I think that opens it up a little bit.
That's not going to happen. Come on.
But yeah, I do think they're going to hang on to the top 6 seed, which is all throughout all this year, all the expectations kind of going up and down. I think top 6 seed would be absolute home run. Avoid the play-in. We've been saying it since week 1. I'm going to give us some credit. Since week 1, we've been saying, man, if they could avoid that play-in tournament, that would be huge.
It's crazy that we are in mid-March, almost mid-March, second week in March. Like, if you would have told me in October that the Cavs would make the play-in, I would have said you're crazy. I mean, unless things like really go their way, they'll make the play-in. Now, I would say it wouldn't be a disaster if they make the play-in, but it would be ugly. It would be an ugly way to end the season if they make the play-in and not just the top 6 seed. Like, what a turnout. I know we talked about this too. It's just like, that's what I said. Just like, I don't want to be Paul Bowen, but just like enjoy this. There's no expectations on the season. The Cavs are playing with house money. Whatever happens, happens. And just like, because let's be honest, after the season, there's gonna be a ton of expectations. So enjoy the season the way it is, and just hope that the Cavs do really. I mean, I think they'll, as I think I said this earlier too. Just don't get swept in the playoffs, and just I just can't wait for a home playoff game. I It seems like it's been forever, but just like I know some of the playoff or some of the atmospheres inside Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse have felt like playoff atmospheres lately. Just imagine it for an actual playoff game.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into this earlier on in the year. I haven't had this much true fun since 2007. And obviously, there's been greater memories that have been had since then, the championship, the finals runs. But the last time I can think about the amount of exceeding expectations and how much fun that is, I think it was 2007 when they made that historic run to the finals, got their asses kicked by the Spurs, but the run they had to get there was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. You just as just a sports fan, you have so much more fun when your team does really well with no expectations. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And before we go any further talking about standings, Detroit is currently up as things as we record this 96-92 over Chicago with 9 minutes left. So no, I'm thinking Toronto too. But even if Chicago loses tonight, the Cavs are only half game back of the Bulls.
And they've got him this weekend, so that could be huge. But yeah, and then I'll quick hit on mailbag question number 2. This one's kind of nuanced, but depends how deep we want to go, I think. So with Jarrett Allen being out, and obviously assume this question that Jarrett Allen is out, for your response to this question, does Evan Mobley play the majority of his minutes at center with Jarrett Allen being out?
Strictly matchup based. I think against the Joel Embiids of the world, he probably won't. Well, I guess maybe Joel Embiid because he's more of like a slasher or a spot up guy outside too. Maybe he will, but like against like Vucevic on Saturday night in Chicago, assuming he plays, I don't see Mobley playing that much 5. I see Ed Davis and Moses Brown, who they just signed to a 10-day deal, playing like maybe 20, 25 minutes combined, maybe, hopefully. Just like it, because I mean, we all want Evan Mobley to like bang and be physical with the big boys, but he's just not there yet. So I just don't see JB putting him in that situation, I guess. But yeah, like I said, it's all matchup based. Against like last night, like I said, against Isaiah Jackson, I mean, it's Isaiah Jackson. You can have Evan Mobley at the 5 and they'll eat him alive like he did last night. But yeah, against like Joel Embiid, maybe. Vucevic, no. Bam, maybe. So maybe Friday he will play a lot at the 5 against Bam, but Saturday I just don't see it. I think JB is going to play an actual true 5-man.
Yeah, I tend to think it's probably going to shake out 50-50-ish. And I think that just talks to like the matchup base. Because if we think about where his minutes came for the Raptors and Pacers game, I think a lot of it was truly at the 5 because the Raptors and Pacers don't have that prototypical huge banging 5. But as you just spelled out, against Embiid and against Jokic and maybe to a degree like Zubac and Hartenstein, I think Mobley will probably play, but like Zubac can bang, so I wouldn't be surprised to see like a hook and throw Davis on Zubac. So yeah, I do think obviously against the teams where they don't have a big gruesome 5, then then he'll probably play the 5. But where teams do, I think they'll probably try to sick Ed Davis or Moses, which, by the way, Moses Brown is just a sweet name. That reminds me of someone on like NBA Street or something. Moses Brown just sounds.
It sounds awesome. Like he has like a sick crossover. I don't know why that's super random, but like Moses Brown with the crossover just sounds like so smooth. And before we move on, Zubac, I feel like Evan Mobley would eat Zubac alive offensively, and Zubac wouldn't be able to do enough with Evan Mobley on defense to like make up for it. Because I just see Evan Mobley just taking Zubac off the dribble. And then again, though, I mean, maybe in the starting lineup with Isaac Okoro, I feel like Zubac might guard Isaac. Because let's be honest, especially once the playoffs come around, the opponent's worst defender is going to guard Isaac Okoro when he's in the game, which is a huge reason why Karis LeVert has to come back too. And hopefully, I mean, we haven't heard anything today. Hopefully that'll be Friday, possibly. I know he They keep saying that he's progressing. I know Rondo came back last night. He didn't play that well, but he came back last night. That was big. If LeVert can come back Friday, hopefully be fully rested, obviously, that'll be huge for this team and the guard situation. But yeah, Zubac's one of those guys where I feel like Mobley can eat him alive. I guess I'll knock on wood right now. But against like the Vucevic's of the world, I just don't see Mobley playing much of the 5.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought LeVert up because we haven't talked about him at all. And I not to dive like too far down a rabbit hole, but with Allen being hurt, at least again in the very near short term, obviously with Allen and Mobley in there, they have an identity, and that's play defensively, tip passes, block shots. With Allen out, you're still going to get a lot of that with Mobley, but your defense obviously goes backwards, right? Allen is the rim protector, like where Mobley's block shots and contest shots, like Allen is the rim protector on this team. And so with LeVert coming back, maybe the way they win changes a little bit in the very near short term until he comes back again. So I think LeVert could really enable a different way for the Cavaliers to win, having that scoring punch, and with him and Garland on the floor at the same time, maybe they can go outscore some folks that, we haven't really seen a lot of that, especially early on. Like it was just all nasty defense from the Cavs. Maybe they can, with LeVert back in the mix, maybe they can outscore some teams.
But then again, Karis LeVert, the biggest part of his offensive game is pick and rolls, and the Cavs are obviously without Jarrett Allen, their best pick and roll guy. So I mean, JB, I know we said that we've been saying this for weeks too. I have full trust in JB and Kobe, especially JB on like the on court game by game basis. I think he'll put his players in the best position to win, and even if that means Evan Mobley setting more screens, even though he's not really used to doing that early on in the season, he'll make it happen. But then again, I don't see Evan Mobley setting a screen against like Vucevic because he'll like run. Well, I guess it's not really versus Vucevic, but I don't know. I have full faith in JB, and I know that he'll put his guys in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, not to pick on this generational talent that is Evan Mobley, but the next time, if you're watching this, the next time you want to see something kind of funny, watch Mobley try to set a screen. He goes up to the guy, and then he almost tries to do like a little shove thing. He like sticks out his arms, does like a little fake shove. Sometimes he doesn't even touch the guy, and then he just starts rolling. It's quite hilarious. I'm not sure when he's actually going to try to make contact.
Even his screens are ghost screens. And if you don't know what a ghost screen is, it's when you go outside your kind of screen, but you don't screen, and then you just run in the basket, and you're trying to get the opposing defense off guard in an easy basket. But yeah, it feels like Evan Mobley loves doing ghost screens, even when they're supposed to be screens.
100%. And again, we're not picking on the generational talent. He's so good. That's all we have. We have to get him on something. He's got to improve on something.
If we're nitpicking here, the fact that we're nitpicking his screen setting as a 20-year-old first-year NBA guy, that is great news, Cavs fans.
Yeah, a lot of worse things we could be nitpicking right now. So yeah, that's that and free throws, and then I'm done. Then he knows what he has to work on this.
Hey, speaking of free throws, though, I know he's shooting like 68% or something bad this year. He was 6 for 8 last night. All of them, he was 6 for 7 in the first half, and I literally had a tweet ready because his 7th one would have been his most free throws in the game this year in his NBA career, technically speaking. So I had the tweet ready, and then he didn't make a single. He went 0 for 1 in the second half. So I was like, all right, delete tweet.
I did make a kind of a rough joke in the Discord. I think. I mean, when his free throws aren't going, man, that ball comes off the rim like it's just a rock, and it's fine. It's like a meteor coming off the rim. Like it's scary. And he's got such incredible touch on his jumpers, and we've seen him hit some tough threes recently, top of the key, like through his legs, hit a three. But sometimes those free throws are coming off hot, man. You got to be careful.
I mean, if he can just like hit. I mean, right now he's like 68%. Just go up like a tick to 75%. I'll take that. So I guess we shouldn't talk about off season yet, but Evan Mobley's 3 things this off season: put on more weight, both fat and muscle, mainly muscle, but fat too, and improve your free throws. And if he can do those, and 3-point shooting. I know that's a lot on his plate going in year 2, but man, if he can just like improve his free throw shooting a little bit, his 3-point shooting just get up to like 35%. I mean, he's going to be unstoppable. Seriously. He really is. I mean, I'm not going to compare him with Kevin Durant yet, but there aren't many 7-footers in the league that can take you off the dribble. from the 3-point line if he has a mismatch, post you up, posterize you if he wants to. And Evan Mobley has a chance to be one of those, and he's only 20.
We should end this show every way the same time, and it's talking about Evan Mobley's potential, because like nothing makes me happier than thinking about how good this kid might be, man. It is so exciting thinking about the future with Evan Mobley because he's such a freak that's so talented.
Exactly. And Evan Mobley's good when Brian Warnhurst a couple weeks ago said something about Evan Mobley. It wasn't his future, but it was something about like, I don't know. Because when Evan Mobley is close to becoming a free agent, all the talk is going to be about where he's going to play next. Let's be honest. But the fact that he's already getting talked about like that shows you how good he is too. And I'll take it. I don't care about 4 years from now. Let's be honest. And speaking of, though, Darius Garland is that good too. You haven't heard a single peep about where he's going to play next. All the talk has just been, I guess this is a bad way to start this 55 minutes into a podcast tonight. But literally the only talk that you hear about Darius Garland's future is when, I guess it was if prior to the season, but now it's when the Cavs are going to offer him a max extension. And not a single word has been about, well, what if you go somewhere else? It's just like he's expected. I guess that's part of the culture. I guess it's part of JB and Kobe and what they've built here. But everything's just about when he's going to sign it and not where he's going to play next, which is huge. And I guess this is a bad tangent and bad hole to go down 55 minutes in this podcast, like I said, but it's true. And it made me think of it with the Evan Mobley talk.
And I guess it's just the reality of the NBA right now, but I almost expect to hear about guys going elsewhere or guys being unhappy with your team. And the fact that, we haven't heard any of that about the Cavaliers because Darius is close, right? I think they can offer him an extension as early as this offseason. So it's not far away to have those conversations. And the fact that we haven't heard it is really encouraging.
Yeah, they can offer. I don't know how many years he has left on his current contract. I'm looking it up right now as I talk. But they can offer him a max this offseason, which you already know they are. It's his max this offseason is 5 years, $184 million.
This year, sounds like a bargain.
Yeah, exactly. $7 million this year, $8.9 million next year, and then an $11.8 million qualifying offer for 2023, 2024 before he becomes a free agent, or he becomes a restricted free agent, obviously. But yeah, they're as soon as the clock ticks midnight or whatever it is on whatever day the new season starts, Kobe Altman's gonna have that signed, sealed, and delivered to Darius Garland's mailbox.
Oh gosh, yeah, this is awesome. The fact of talking about future, I this might be like a show mandate moving forward. If someone else gets injured, Cavs lose 2 in a row, we're talking long term. Because now I'm just in a good mood. It's incredible.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the Jarrett Allen injury sucks, but maybe long term wise, it's going to be a good thing just because Evan Mobley's thrown in the fire as a 5-man. And he's flourished. He flourished, and Jarrett Allen broke his finger 10 minutes into the game Friday night. Evan Mobley came in and had 20 points, 17 rebounds. And then last night, as the full-time 5-man, he had 20 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks. Those aren't his exact stats, but he filled up the stat sheet. And I don't care who it's against. I don't care if it's against the Pacers or the Sixers. It's just, you love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely love to see it. And oh man, I think coming off of this season, there's going to be some incredible articles about, the new duos and trios of the league under a certain age. And I definitely need to get on writing something like that for WFNY, man. It's going to be incredible to project not only next year, but the next 2 years, the next 3 years, Darius on a max, Mobley still Mobley, the idea of how much value he's going to bring the Cavs when he's still on his rookie deal. It's almost like that QB window, right? Because he's this good. It's man, their window really is the next 2-3 years before they have to max.
You just had to bring up quarterbacks in the NFL, didn't you?
I didn't mention a single one. Tried to keep it bland.
No, but seriously, yeah, you're right. They need to take advantage of just having Jarrett Allen 5. And speaking of contracts, Jarrett Allen 5 years, $100 million. I remember right when he signed that, some fans were saying that that's overpriced. That is so underpriced now. If I bet you if he was a free agent this offseason, he would get. I mean, he would get at least 5 years, 25 million a year, not 5 years, 20 million. And another big guy, Lowry Markkinen. We're not going to talk contract wise, but he's been playing really well. He's stepped in a bit. He needs to step just like Evan Mobley. Lowry needs to step up in a big way without Jarrett Allen, both offensively and defensively. He played really well last night again. He's making his threes, being efficient from the floor. I mean, this Tower City lineup that JB orchestrated, plus Darius. I mean, it's just crazy to now. It went from like the Golden State Warriors doing the death small ball lineup to, I mean, who will be the next team that has 3 7-footers in the starting lineup? And they'll be copying off the Cavs. Let's be honest. It's just like the Cavs are leaders, not followers, both literally and figuratively. And it's just this season as a whole has been freaking incredible. The future is even brighter somehow. I just can't wait. I really can't.
It's hard to believe that the future is brighter. And one thing on Lowry, so he's been, I don't know if you've sensed this, Josh, but he's been a little polarizing this year. Obviously, he had a tough time shooting the ball early on in the season, and I think some fans were questioning, like, what's his fit? Is he a good enough offensive player to deal with? Sometimes he's not the best defensive player when he's trying to guard like a wing. But man, the injury really, like, him being gone, what's that, like, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Lowry being gone and then seeing what he brought to the Cavs when he came back, I'm like, oh yeah, he's worth the 15, 16 million. His ability to stretch the floor, his ability to post up bigger guys when he gets it in. He made a couple of tip-ins off of like 6'5", 6'6" guys who were trying to guard him. It's just like, man, he really has a size advantage, and that shows up. Like he can play physical, and man, I really, I maybe, to be candid, like, undervalued what he brought to the Cavs when he wasn't shooting extremely well. Of course, I'm going to be a little reactionary, but man, when he's hitting his threes and then he's taking advantage of those smaller guys, he's a weapon. I mean, he's a serious offensive weapon, and yeah, very impressed with him the past couple of weeks since he's come back. And yeah, the Cavs, just another awesome piece.
I'm looking at his stats right now. He's averaging 14 points a game. Exactly, actually. 5.5 rebounds. I'll take that. I mean, yeah, he might be a little bit overpaid, but if the Cavs are going with his 3 7-footer lineup, he is I love the guy. But he is shooting a career low 33.9% from 3. That number needs to go up, obviously. I hope it does. I think lately he's been, ever since he came back from his injury, I'm not going to look it up, but I think he's been shooting better than that. Just like last year, he shot 40.2% from 3. Imagine if he just gets that number up to 40% again, how much of a weapon he'll be offensively. And part of the reason why he might be struggling this year is just, well, not this year, but just like as a whole. Imagine if Darius Garland was fully healthy all season, and instead of having and I'm not hating on Brandon Goodwin, but we all know he's like the 14th or 15th man on that healthy roster. Imagine if he had Darius Garland every game this season passing the ball instead of the Brandon Goodwins and the Kevin Pangoses of the world sometimes. Because, I mean, yes, a player getting paid like Lowry does should be able to create for himself, but that's just not the player he is. He needs a point guard that will give them the ball in the right spots. So just, yeah, like you said, we're nitpicking here too for Lowry, I guess, but just imagine if he shoots 40% the rest of the way and even in the next season. And I mean, if you have Lowry, I'm just thinking about the next season's lineup. Even if you don't have Colin Sexton back, which is a whole nother podcast discussion this offseason, just like there's so many weapons they have offensively. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, that's the one thing. If they keep this current team together, and they kind of they run it back next year, if they can add Sexton to the bunch and he plays as I guess at that point he would be like an unrestricted. But thinking about the flexibility they have with Mobley and with Lowry and with Colin, like they can bang if they want to go big, if they want to go small. They have all this flexibility. It's like truly a treasure trove if everyone's healthy. It's exciting to think about. I'm sure JB is like licking his chops if it's matchup based. He can go which way he needs to.
I'm fine with one team in Cleveland running it back next season, and it's the Cavs. I'll put it that way.
I don't know what you're alluding to. We'll just move right on.
Seriously though, I mean the Cavs. 38-27. If they go 8-9 the rest of the way, which will be a little bit disappointing, I feel like that will secure a top 6 seed unless somehow the Raptors go on some sort of amazing run against this tough schedule they have. I just don't see it happening. Knock on wood. And speaking of NBA standings, Chicago just took Chicago goes up 5 with a minute left, so the Cavs will go a full game behind them. But yeah, it's just I'm glad to be smiling during the whole podcast. It's just so hard not to smile when you're talking Cavs. Whether even Jarrett Allen injury, but then again we discussed it. Maybe for the long term of this team, it's good for Evan Mobley. Maybe I'm thinking too positive, but I feel like it is.
Yeah. Hey, we've been going macro for the last half of this pod, so we'll keep going macro, and man, it's going to be fun, especially to see Mobley against some of these bigger, clunkier guys potentially. Like if the Cavs do decide to go a bit smaller, and the opposing team has like a big guy out there that is a little slow, watching Mobley dissect him from like mid range or outside could be seriously fun.
Like Zubac and the Clippers. But so before we finish this thing off, any last final thoughts?
No, I'm in official scoreboard watching mode. Like every night I'm looking at box scores, figuring out what's going on. Boston's going to win tonight. Detroit's only down by 4 now, 19 seconds to go. Miami's going to get beat by Phoenix. Looks like the Bucks are going to win. So no, it's like full scoreboard mode. And I'm ready to get back to a game. I've been traveling too much. I haven't been back to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and it's been like a month and a half. So I'm ready to get back, hopefully catch a game, get some of that playoff atmosphere. Every night the Cavs play on TV, like the fans are incredible. It's so noticeable. When they play an away game, it's like embarrassing to see how many open seats there are. Rocket Mortgage is packed. It's loud. The atmosphere seems incredible. So I'm excited to get back and go.
My only game this season was 5 days ago. We won't talk about it. It was a Charlotte game. It was ugly. We won't talk about it anymore. I'm hoping to get back to a game sooner rather than later. I hope I wasn't the reason why they stunk that so bad that night. But it is what it is. Looking ahead to next week, though, I'm looking at their schedule. They play Friday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that if we don't do that like we've been doing this on a 9-game night, that leads us with either Tuesday or Thursday. I was thinking Thursday, but then I remembered that is the first day of March Madness, and it's St. Patty's Day. So Thursday might not be the move there. So possibly we'll be back with you on Tuesday. It would be the night before the Philadelphia game. I think, is it a home? Is Philly at home? Yeah. So it's and the night before they host the Sixers, and the night after they host the Clippers. So 3 games from now, we might be back with you. Unless it's 4 games from now, but I just don't see Thursday, especially with March Madness going on. I'm just going to be locked in the college basketball literally all day. But either way, we'll be back with you at some point next week, probably Tuesday, but at some point. As usual, thanks for joining us. If you're watching us live, we appreciate it. If you're listening to us at some point this week on wherever you listen to your podcast, we appreciate that as well. And we will be back with you next week. Go Cavs.
Let's go Cavs.